Hi, this is John Pritchard, and you are listening to Awaken Nation with Brad Solis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Solis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Let me tell you, John, man, I am so glad you agreed to do the show, brother. You ready to go?
I'm excited too, Brad.
We have all kinds of guests on the show, and the premise of the show is really people who've been through something extraordinary, and they just can't live their life the same way ever again. And you, my friend, we go back since what was the year? 94?
1994.
Wow. Yeah.
New York City, Union Square.
Wow. This is crazy, man.
We had the light and sound office with Dennis Phipps, one of your old partners.
Yeah.
And he's the one who introduced us.
Yes.
He said, you got to meet my friend Brad. He's running the first internet business on Wall Street. Right?
Yeah. That was funny. Yeah, we shared space with Dennis and my company K2, and you came in. You were working. Was it Planet Direct you were working with at the time?
That was a couple years later when I moved up. I was recruited by CMGI, who was like the Microsoft of the internet up in Boston, and Planet Direct was the second creative director job before iCast, which was the coolest. $100 million startup. Neil Braun from NBC Studios came with his two secretaries, knew nothing about the internet in 1999. And but anyway, going back to when we first met, you were right on the cutting edge, brother.
Well, it's crazy to watch your career, my career, and here we are again. And what the reason I want everybody to know who John Pritchard is because he is the eyes and ears of the cutting edge of this awakening that we're talking about. And you're a documentary filmmaker. You transitioned really well from creative director to documentary filmmaker. And so we're going to talk about this because on this show, I think you are the benchmark for extraordinary. Loving hard, incredible. We're going to be talking. Kind. I want everybody to get ready because we're going to be talking about his films, and we're going to be talking about. And by the way, we're going to put some clips of your films up on YouTube so you can see them within this interview. And We're going to talk about this powerful vision because you go on location, you get to talk to these people, and I just want everybody to know who you are, man. So let me dig in. We're going to read your bio, your intro, fanfare, everything. But John Pritchard is an award-winning filmmaker whose newest film, Respect for All, was released on Thanksgiving Day, 2019. And the world premiere will be at Lincoln Center in New York City on January 13th, 2020. His second film, OJALÁ, Puerto Rico Rebuilds, has its premiere in New York City, November 16th at the 2018 International Puerto Rican Heritage Film Festival. That is kudos to you, man. I love it. His first feature was the Australian Aboriginal film One Heart, One Spirit, which won Best Indigenous Documentary at the 2017 Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in Australia. In 2016, he founded his nonprofit educational film company, One Heart Movies, aka the One Heart, One Spirit Project. John focuses on producing films that promote respect for all people and help create a kinder world. In 2012, as part of his multimedia publishing company, Eternal Ways, John produced one of the world's greatest online learning programs for jazz musicians, Freddie's Guide to Creative Improvisation. It features over 300 video clips of Berklee of College music professor Fred Lipschitz, who was an original member of the legendary band Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Welcome to the show, John. I appreciate you being here, man.
It's a pleasure, Brad. It's a total honor.
Thanks, brother. So let me ask you this. How did you make this transition from being a creative director in the advertising world, working with stuffy companies like an American Express and Bear Stearns? How did you make that transition?
Well, the transition was made for me by the internet blowing up in 2001. I had about $3.5 million of stock in iCast that was a year early to mature when they pulled the plug, as hundreds of internet companies were pulled.
Yeah.
Did K2 make it through?
We did our IPO, and we did well for about a year or two, and then the dot-com boom imploded, and we got bought up by a much bigger fish, lock, stock, and barrel. So we got lucky.
Cool.
But yeah, we were still doing projects.
So that was what really decided my fate, because I moved back here to Williamstown, where I finished high school. It's really beautiful. West Massachusetts, Berkshire Valley, Williams College is here. So there's lots of culture, Mass MoCA, the Clark Art. I'm an artist at heart. I haven't painted since college, but
Right.
I've been doing digital stuff. And the whole movie thing began way back in my senior year when I went to China on a grant from the Cashin Endowment and visited 5 very small towns of 3 million plus people. There were no cars yet. There were no refrigerators. There was barely, electricity in a lot of these locations. But
Wow.
I was able to do a very cool film, and that got me into filmmaking. And that was before digital. This is analog tape and Super 8 millimeter film. And
well, when you and I met, this is the hysterical part. We were talking about the internet and the explosion of, how we're going to do everything online. And Wired Magazine was talking about all this, and they literally had the worst website ever at the time. And it was a printed magazine that used, I counted it, used a 4-color process plus about 15 spot colors. And so we were talking about this digital revolution that was coming, but we were still working with slides, and film and things like this. So this is powerful. So I want people to understand, we go back in time, and when we talk about it being the Wild West, it truly was.
It really was. And there were no rules. And I really cut my teeth creatively working as a consultant for Apple with a bunch of advertising firms in particular that had the great impact on me. I did not know how deceptive advertising really was until I worked with some very, very, very smart people who had very serious, almost black magic tricks of focusing your attention with audio and imagery. So in 30 seconds, you were thinking about buying their product. And I just got it by osmosis because I was just showing them how to use the computer. And everybody creatively in New York City in the 90s was on a Mac. There was no option yet on Windows. Even though Windows 95 came out, people were not flocking for creative solutions yet.
No. It was when Apple was in trouble.
Oh, big
that
trouble.
we started to see the PC software versions of Photoshop and Illustrator and even Quark Express. So people were kind of like, if you were creative in New York City or in Silicon Valley on the West Coast, you had to have a Mac product at that time. By the way, at K2, we got one of the first 50 Power Macs off the assembly line. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, one whole megabyte of memory.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember when 80 megs of RAM was like $1,600?
It was nuts.
Oh,
but
yeah,
this is what's exciting about today's world, because we're about to enter AI. we're about to enter a world where there is not going to be this focus on tech. People keep talking tech, 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 tech. No, no, no. No, we're going to go right into humanity. And it's not just a bunch of dribble when you hear people with very solid futuristic grounding talking about how love is about to have its day in the world. It's been repressed by technology. And I've been right on the front line, so I've seen the repression. I've seen, especially this generation now, that is, what do you call them now? Do you call them Generation Z?
Yeah, that's pretty much the standard, although there's a couple of that.
Generation Z is going to save the world.
Right.
No question about it. They already are. My niece, who's in my film, is 16, and people who have seen the film already are like, who is that woman? And I'm like, that woman is only 16. But it's like many of the young people today, they feel this openness to humanity that as much as I did as a younger person, it's not like it is today because of the web, because of the internet.
Here's a clip from Respect for All, and this is the type of young person John is talking about.
It's just because someone looks different than another. Okay, we are the same judgmental human beings within ourselves. I notice a difference about you, you notice a difference about me. But it's a matter of, okay, well maybe that's not super appropriate. Maybe that's an inside thought, because I've been around plenty of grown adults that sometimes there are things that are said out loud that are just not appropriate. You can think whatever you would like to in your own head, but it's respecting yourself enough to not make a fool out of yourself. Because in today's age, there's just no excuse for racism, sexism, whatever it is. All the isms, there's not room for it. Because we have plenty of issues like climate change to worry about without having the unnecessary, oh, well, you know, that person really doesn't belong here. That's absurd.
This is the thing that I started to notice, John, and I think you've noticed it as well. The next generation is not like previous generations. And a lot of people want to say, no, they're just like we were at that time. And I disagree. And here's why. We've opened a Pandora's box on how we have raised kids. And they started to call them on the West Coast indigo kids and crystal kids that were coming in. And these kids as a group were saying no to rules. They were more psychic. They were intuitive. They didn't want to obey the rules. They liked to paint and draw and do poetry and dance and do all these things. Now, some of you who are listening may be sitting here, well, you know, that's what happens on the West Coast. You know, it's all that hippy-dippy stuff. You know, is it the cart before the horse kind of thing? Well, I've noticed it in my own nephew. They will leave en masse at a company when it doesn't work out right. They are, you know, we can argue that it's groupthink, but they don't want to go down the same roads of colonialism, corporatism, or plutocracy. They want a world where we have respect for all life, all things, everything. So let's talk about this. This film probably blew your mind, because if you're like me, you learn as you're creating. You're going, whoa, what am I seeing on this camera right now?
Well, the beginning for me, Brad, goes way back to when my family moved to Argentina when I was 8. And this is 1969. All right, so the moon landing hadn't happened yet, but it did in a few months after we moved to Buenos Aires, and I learned Spanish. I was in 2nd grade through 5th grade, and I saw poverty. I'd never seen poverty. I grew up in Connecticut, Darien, Connecticut, and I had realized over the course of a couple years in South America, my family got to travel to Brazil and Peru and Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, you know, before I was 10. And that helped me appreciate what we have here. What the United States is so special because we are this mix. People forget that we are immigrants by definition. I mean, it's
totally.
like we can all trace something back somewhere. And then on my mom's side, we have Native American Cherokee going back to the late 1700s, where Farah B. Luna in North Carolina married a captain. I always want to say Captain Parmenter from F Troop. One of my favorite shows when I was growing up. Agar, remember Agarn?
Yeah.
Agarn and the sergeant.
Yep.
But anyway, this Native American thing came to life jumping to college when I worked with Mohawk Native American kids on the Akwesasne Reservation during my summers. Upward Bound is a kind of Peace Corps version for high school kids to usually our first generation college students, and huge success, 500 locations around the country on college campuses, and 98% success rate pretty much across the board for kids going on with college prep help. They live on the campus for 6 weeks in the summers. But anyway, I really got into the family life on the reservation because I went back after college and became assistant director, and that gave me faculty status to get free master's program in education at St. Lawrence University. And I learned about daily life for Native Americans today on a reservation, and it was harsh. I saw the beginning of a casino. This was right before the casino kind of saved the day. I mean, I am not an advocate, as I know you're living in Las Vegas, casino capital of the world.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an advocate to appreciate a sense of business and well-being that comes from that business, despite, perhaps the the behaviors that people do when they're gambling. It was a real eye-opener, and my heart expanded because of my exposure to Native people on the res. And then in right during the year that you and I met at Union Square, New York City, that was when I met Ken Littlehawk and Greg Reeves from Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And we had that cool band, Sintala, and we recorded that album, which became the soundtrack to my first feature film, One Heart, One Spirit. But Ken was the guy that really gave me the respect vision, because that's what he and his wife have been doing for 35 years. Respect for all and be kinder to the world. And that's my motto.
Yeah, I've worked with Greg Reeves as well. He used to work at my company K2, but we had a band together as well called Heartland. And I met Ken Littlehawk, and many times we've sat down. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who Ken Littlehawk is, he is the embodiment of what you would see as a native indigenous shaman would look like and sound like and be like. Like, there is nothing but pure love from that brother. And he plays the flute, the wood flute. He's an amazing
flute player. Used to be a jazz trumpet player, but the flute is what we played within his band. And he's in the movie. I took 5 clips from the One Heart, One Spirit movie and put him in this current movie.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
The whole movie started in January. I interviewed him down in Jersey. They live off the Jersey Shore near Toms River.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were down visiting them in January. He's unfortunately having a challenging time with his health. He's 84, and they don't do any more shows. But as you'll see in the movie, he is as strong as ever and speaks to the whole topic very well. And he started he was the first of the 5 people I interviewed for the movie.
Well, I'd like our listeners to get a treat. And this is a little bit of Ken Littlehawk from your One Heart, One Spirit. Or which one? Yes. Which movie was it from?
It's from One Heart, One Spirit, but it's in the current movie, Respect for All. And the clip is called How Would It Be?
How Would It Be? Here we go. Ken Littlehawk.
Here's something that I wrote recently. It's a very short tune, but it's very long on heart. And the words are, how would it be if you, yes, you, looked at me as brother? How would it be if she over there looked at her over there as sister? Elders, all elders, as grandmother and grandfather, and the children, all of the children as our own. How would it be if we looked at Earth as mother? How would it be if we looked at sky as father? How would it be if we really cared for each other? That's the reason our ancestors existed at all. How would it be?
And we're back. Man, that dude is mind blowing. He always has been. You know, we used to sit and talk, and I'd be like, you know, it's rare that somebody makes me go, "Great Scott!" You know, you just sit back and you go, "What did he just say?" Yeah, and you feel like you're sitting around the fire, no matter where you're at. You with Ken Littlehawk, you feel like you're sitting around the fire, taking this all in.
Yes.
But when I first was seeing your work, it was One Heart, One Spirit that you introduced me to. And I endorsed the film because it was just mind-blowing. Let's talk about that, because you went to Australia, you sat with the Aboriginal tribes, you really blew the doors off on this. You went 100% on this documentary.
Well, guess what? I was not there. Greg was there.
Greg was
there, and Greg hired 2 filmmakers to follow Ken around for 3 days. They got 35 hours of footage, and 8 years later, they had no film yet.
What?
So I said, send me the footage, brother. Send me the footage.
That's how it worked out.
That's how it worked.
My goodness.
And Greg, he had to sign the movie over to me because it was a lot of work. Took a couple years on weekends and nights, and there was no storyline. There was nothing. Yeah. And it through the very, very powerful tool that I use called meditation. I mean, I'm telling you, Brad.
Yeah.
Meditation, contemplation, whatever you want to call it. This is the key to real creative expansion, because left to our own devices, we're only as good as our ego, and our ego sucks. Our ego is a mechanism to get us food on the table and to keep ourselves alive and moving, but it is our heart and our creative spirit that comes alive through meditation and contemplation. And that is why that movie won the award, because I listened. It's what I call all my films. They are God project. And I don't talk about it except when I'm in a situation like this where I'm fortunate to be able to explain a little bit, but it is a real blessing to be able to take footage from 40,000-year-old culture. I mean, you realize that this is where the didgeridoo was made. This is where they're now considering the origin of mankind is not Africa. I mean, they're actually really saying that it came from Australia, then went up to Africa because they now have 200,000-year-old carved stone evidence. So anyway.
Well, I don't know if you ever read the book First Civilization, but they start to talk about this idea in Australia where, excuse me, they have a didgeridoo that is tuned perfectly to the resonance of the earth. And when they want to heal Mother Earth, they play this didgeridoo. And this is mind-blowing. Like, this isn't like somebody guessed this. They have the octave exact. So the wisdom of the ancients is right there if we take the time to listen. We love to, in our Western world, believe based on what? Archaeologists who are saying, well, the people who came before us were ignorant and they used bones and copper chisels to make the pyramids, to draw and hang out and to live.
As if the pyramids like that, right?
Well, now we have to laugh at this because clearly civilization has had its ebbs and flows where we've been more spiritually advanced than we are today, and we've been less technologically advanced. We go up and down and up and down. And so this is mind-blowing, the One Heart, One Spirit. I think that movie just made me sit there and go, John is on to something. You know what I mean? So it was incredibly powerful. And if we can,
John
I want
and Greg, you have to give Greg a lot of credit.
Greg Reeves.
He really saw this, and he invited Ken and Beverly to come to Australia, tour a bunch of schools, do their Little Hawk show, and then they got invited up to the Garma Festival for 3 days, which is always the first weekend in August since 1999. And they invite a couple thousand white people basically to their holy center where they do all these very cool dances that you see in the movie, and really share the wisdom of Aboriginal reality. And it's different, brother. It is different.
In the Aboriginal culture, they believe that the dream time is the reality time, and what we have here is actually the illusion. So they live in an opposite world from us.
Well, and it's interesting because it actually, not unlike our own dreaming, sometimes it crosses over. And there's you'll like this being a fan of extraterrestrial info. One of the guys who is a very, very prominent elder in this Yolngu tribe, which is who the tribe is that hosts this Garma festival, he had spoken about how it was such a joke. The white man went to the moon. They've been traveling back and forth to the moon for thousands of years. They don't have any limitations on the physical body because they're able to move their consciousness as if we were getting in a car and going to another city.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I've only had it once or twice kind of in the dream state where I've had this ability to move my consciousness. But this is the difference of a culture. You know, we're very embedded into the physical world, and as soon as you start doing a little bit of meditation, a little bit of yoga perhaps, or exercises that move us out of the physical into this realm of consciousness, pure consciousness, we find all kinds of other realities that are not fantasy. They're not made up, and they're not horror shows.
Right. Well,
which is what we get a lot of.
Yeah. Well, I feel incredibly blessed because my ex-wife, Norma, is from Haiti. And just being around her and meditating and doing all kinds of stuff, I started to awaken to these other realities. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're really mired in the Western world and this sounds like poppycock, let me tell you something. just look at our resumes. John and I have achieved things. We were not born with silver spoons in our mouth. And the things we've achieved have been through meditation, because when you meditate, you open up the door of possibility. I am living proof. John is living proof. And I can give you hundreds and hundreds of other people that are living proof that meditation takes us and transforms us if we're willing to go along with the ride and let go of the left brain dominance. The first thing Norma told me was, you're too American in the way you think. Now, I never let go of being an American with the American consciousness, but I was able to take steps upward and into higher realms because I could see I had to let go of that and know that there were other possibilities happening in the world. And you can create your reality by simply just meditating. It's that simple, right, John?
It is. How do we become extraordinary? Okay. We have to tune into our extrasensory perception, which everyone has. Have you met anyone who does not have some kind of intuition or some kind of psychic ability that they can't account for? I mean, people tell me all the time, I was just thinking about him when all of a sudden he called. Or I knew this was going to happen, and then it happened. And, you know, this is not an uncommon experience. What's uncommon is not practicing a focus on this higher consciousness. And as soon as you do, as you and I have, stuff happens.
You have to let it happen. Yeah, it's crazy. We laugh. Oh, my goodness. I every once in a while you have your headlights on, you know what I mean? Where you're walking around and the glow in your eyes and the joy and the love. And I remember walking through Manhattan. It's crazy. People are rushing and blah, blah, blah. They're doing, elbowing to get to the light and the traffic's moving. And I remember walking down the street with a cup of coffee, just glowing in this, basking in this, watching this cacophony and this really tall African man in African robes is walking towards me, and our eyes met and we burst out laughing because we were both in the same resonance field of joy and love and watching this craziness, and we laughed. I shook his hand and we just kept going. You're like two best friends who just saw each other again after lifetimes. And let me tell you, if there are those of you listening who don't understand that this connection that just happens, just let it happen. Don't be afraid. It's coming. There is an awakening. Your adult children are already in the groove of it all. And John, just the work that John does, he exposes some of this. He gives you a window into what soul is creating here on earth right now. And it's just pretty powerful. It really is powerful.
Well, now, I just want to share something very big that happened to me in New York City on the subways. Every day I was living on the Upper East Side, 86th Street. I'd get in and I'd start meditating because people don't realize the subways are actually pretty quiet. People are not chit-chatting.
Nobody talks. Yep.
Right? Especially in the morning. Okay, this is like before 8 a.m., right?
It's like the weirdo on the elevator. Nobody's going to talk.
Exactly. And so I could close my eyes, holding on to the pole, and I got so familiar with the rhythm that I would know exactly where to get out at Union Square. And that was about 15 minutes, which was about all I needed to start my day. Now, of course, there were some really funny things that would happen from time to time. Like people coming in who don't smell quite right.
Right.
And you'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it's not unlike how we see the news and we're shocked by something we see, and it kind of interrupts our flow. But we have to get used to this, right? We have to adapt, improvise. I always love the Marines. Adapt and improvise. I was never a Marine, but I kind of feel like from New York City, I don't know about you, but the 10 years I was in New York City, that was Marine training for me. I mean, my armor was my suit, my suspenders, and my colorful socks.
Oh, yeah, I remember you dressed really sharp. really well. That's good.
You had to. I mean, I was working with Goldman Sachs, American Express down on Wall Street, then McGraw-Hill and Time Warner in Midtown, and then the ad agencies, which were just full of creative, amazing people making $300,000 or $400,000 a year, and you just kind of be like, wow, I had no idea you could make that. And this is back in the 90s when that was worth a lot more, scratch than it is today.
I remember when I met Len Lowy, which is a legend in advertising. And my only thing is I didn't want to work in a bullpen. I didn't want to be treated like crap for 9 years. I didn't want to do it. I want to talk about your film about Puerto Rico rebuilding. And say it again, it's
Ojalá. Ojalá is a Spanish word that comes from Arab origins that basically means God's wish. It's God's wish. Ojalá. Right. For something to happen. And it's almost a colloquial term in not just Puerto Rico, but all Spanish-speaking countries.
Yeah. People don't realize the influence of the Arab world in the Latin American countries. And I discovered that, being with Norma in Haiti, there's a lot of Arab people there. You get a lot of last names that are Arabic and first names that are French, Arabic, even German. And so they truly have a milieu down there. Yeah. But let's roll a clip from the movie.
Ojalá.
Ojalá, Puerto Rico Rebuilds. Here we go.
After a crisis such as the one that we experienced, you see the creativity bursting. And that's a sign of what the people of Puerto Rico are made of, what we are. That's the fiber of our country.
We need to find a way to come together on a common path forward so that we build a better Puerto Rico for future generations.
We only have one option: go forward.
It's gonna take sweat and tears, hopefully not blood.
No importa qué pase, si, hay alegría, o sea, dentro de todo.
Hay música bien el sábado y domingo. Yo espero que ustedes patrocinen este lugar, porque amablemente Florida nos invitó, pero tienen que patrocinar.
Man, I've been to Puerto Rico, and I got to tell you, there's so much beauty, but there's also so much poverty and so much of a dichotomy, because people don't realize that's a tax haven, has been a tax haven for 60, 70 years now. And so when they go through hell, the first thing I said, and you and I both have a lot of Latin friends from Puerto Rico, I basically said, so, okay, it was a tax haven for all those years. What are these companies doing to help? You've gotten your tax breaks. How about helping? And they didn't really step up and do anything. Am I right?
Yeah, it's very difficult to give any credit to corporate or wealthy people in Puerto Rico. There is a massive divide. And what was cool about the hurricane, and when I went to film it last year in July, people had just kind of come out of a 6 or 7 month recovery. There were still a bunch of blue tarps left for many people who had their roofs literally blown off by the hurricane. But what happened is that people came together, and I'm very optimistic about Puerto Rico's future. It's amazing to see what happened this summer with Rosselló, who was the governor. In 1 week, he was out because they found chit-chat transcripts of him dissing his people when, there was this whole controversy, how many people really died and all this, and they heard them really disparaging their own people, and man,
they don't mess around.
People, this is something we haven't seen in our lifetime in our country. We read about it in the 60s, but we haven't seen 1 million people come together and say, no more governor, you're out. And they did. Puerto Rican people.
Yeah, Boricua power.
That's right, Boricua power.
Let me tell you something. When all that storm hit and people were hiding food and water, the trucking companies suddenly raised their rates to $150 an hour, went on strike. I mean, it was so many people were trying to take advantage of just simple helping your fellow human being. What is going on? And this happened in Haiti after the Haitian earthquake.
Right.
My brother-in-law survived, and they sent down all this food and cargo, big freighter boxes. Do you know to this day they're still sitting on the dock?
I believe it.
All this red tape because people want to make a little money on the side.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to give. And the one thing that people may not know about the United States is we are one of the only countries in the world that is really known for just giving. We can argue all we want about the political climate and things like this, but I've seen people in tears because an American will just hand them 10 grand, and they're like, they start crying. They're like, only an American would do this, Well,
fortunately, I think that has expanded, and I've seen it with people all around the world, friends that I have. What used to be exclusively kind of an American sentiment to be generous and to help, especially in emergencies. I think that has expanded now, Brad. I think we're starting to see the world as a whole become, this is what I was saying earlier, more human, right?
Yeah.
We feel our brothers and sisters. We don't know who they are. We don't speak their language. They're different. And yet we feel a connection.
We do. This is interesting. In Haiti, right after the earthquake, like the very next day, Israel and South Korea sent help right away. And the news was like on this. And do you know it took 2 weeks for the United States to send a medical frigate? And it's 120 miles off the coast of Florida. Exactly. What is wrong with us? We didn't help. Why didn't we help? We have used Haiti for years because there's a lot of gold there, there's a lot of diamonds there, there's a lot of oil there. And now all of a sudden when they needed help, they tell everybody, don't go to Haiti, it's a hole. They keep it that way for a reason. They don't want tourists going down there. Because they are enriching themselves from these islands, and now we're not helping. We should be helping. Dude, I'm so blown away by your work because you're telling a story, and you're telling a story as if it's your mission to get this out. And I want to talk about the new one, Respect for All. Let's get back to this. What was the mind blower in this movie as you're filming? Because a lot of times people may not know this. It's not scripted.
Right.
You're taking in information. You're doing interviews. And all of a sudden somebody will say something and you're just like, I can't believe they just said that. And you have to put that in the film. So what blew your mind on Respect for All?
Well, it was really Otha, who's the central person as a community builder here locally in the Berkshires, a drum circle facilitator. He was a classical pianist, taught at Williams, and then got a stroke, ended up learning how to play drums because of the left-right hand therapy that helps the brain. Took up drumming 15 years ago and became his calling to use drumming as a tool to build community and to also teach respect, looking people in the eye, talking, listening. These are things we don't get a chance to do in too many environments. We go to the movies, what do? Watch. We don't talk about the movie, do we? We go to sports, what do? We watch and yell. We love sports, but we don't talk. So drumming as a community activity is what he's been doing for 15 years here. He's huge. I mean, and there are very few black folks here in the Berkshires of Western Mass.
Right.
So what shocked me was when he started talking about, and I almost opened the film. This is in the first 3 minutes. You hear him talk about how he feels targeted when he leaves his girlfriend's house about 45 minutes away from where he lives here in Williamstown. She lives down in Great Barrington. He goes out of her house and he feels like there's a target on his back. Not that they're going to hurt him, but he feels those eyes. And he says he's felt that all his life. He grew up in Mississippi, and when he would go into a white establishment, he would feel all eyes on him because he's black.
Right.
So hearing him, and I've known Otha for many years, and I had never heard this story. So that's where the theme of respect, as it's addressed through stopping racism. How do we stop racism? Well, we start caring more. Just like you were talking about Haiti. How do we stop that kind of treatment where the wealthy don't want to have people going to Haiti and helping Haiti? Well, we kind of remove that authority and put our own authority in and help and talk and provide a two-way channel. So we're now expanding into humanity, right? And you're one of the great humanitarians I know, and I've seen you in your TED Talk, especially that first TED Talk you did.
Yeah,
that was fabulous. That was fabulous.
Thank you. Thanks, brother. Thank you. I'm a little.
So anyway, that was
blushing.
Was
Thank you.
Part of the movie that sets up then Charlotte, who's 16, and it became really a student activist after the Parkland shootings a couple years ago. She really, and it was also her age, she was 14 and was feeling this craziness of like, there might be a gun at my school. I might be targeted at my school. And this was a crazy thing to her here in the Berkshires. And then climate change was the rallying cry that I think really hit her last year.
Right.
That people don't care enough. The fact that we've pulled out of Paris, the fact that we've allowed quite a few companies to go back into places that were reserved for the environment, and to drill and to frack,
Well,
it's shocking to young people. Especially.
That might be your next documentary, because I actually got upset because you may not know this, but around the 70s, a cabal of corporations came together, and they were the ones that were generating most of the trash and all the carcinogens in our atmosphere. And they rallied together to create an advertising campaign that blamed the consumer for pollution and littering. And the campaign well, because it was a Native American standing on the side of the road crying as people dumped trash out of their car. Now, have you ever seen somebody dump a bag of trash out of their car? Probably not. Maybe it happens. I don't know. But this was such a manipulation by advertising agencies hired by companies like Coca-Cola to kind of place the blame on us rather than them. And this is my argument. Well, okay, let's talk about climate change. Let's say it is happening because man is polluting. Then shouldn't we be focused on the polluters? Hello? Because I don't know about you, but as soon as I heard that aerosol, hairspray put a hole in the ozone layer, I stopped using aerosol anything.
Right.
I went to pumps immediately. I took my responsibility and lived it. Sure. And so I see people all the time who are flying in on jets, and I don't know if you've ever attended a big corporate event. The executives never pick up their own garbage. It just doesn't happen. I'm like, this is part of me that just kind of goes, ugh. And that's what's being left out of the conversation. You and I don't dump 1 million gallons of chemicals into the water every year. We don't.
I think, Brad, the good news is that's starting to slowly flip. And yes, it is. As I asked Ken back in January, I said, Ken, now what do we do with all the people that are haters, that are so angry? And he says, well, my wife said that we just have to wait for them to die. In other words, there's no hope. You're not going to change someone, but it is a generational thing, right? And we're starting to see a new generation. Your company, I remember reading in your Liquid Leadership book about how you were shocked by kids working at your company and wanting to have a say, right?
Yeah, they wanted to have a seat at the table to tell me how to run my company. I took the risk. I was the one who didn't go with a paycheck for weeks at a time so they could get paid. Right. And I'm sitting here and they're demanding stuff. And I'm looking at them going, that was the boomer in me sitting there going, how dare you?
How dare you?
And I had to change. I mean, I had to grow up and say, they are an integral part of the company.
So I think that's starting to happen more. And I think we're going to see that more. And I think that's one of the great things about the political situation right now. We're going to see change, and it's important that people are challenged and people have to get to the heart of what they believe in. And I think that the humanity is going to win. And there's not so many signs of that happening quite yet.
Well,
so I'm a little bit.
As soon as I hear people complain about capitalism, I correct them immediately, because true capitalism allows you and I to make our money and go about what we do. We live in a plutocracy, and a plutocracy is when corporations control the government. So now that I just said that, you're probably all now going, wait a minute, he is right. It's not crony capitalism. They love to water it down and confuse you. We have a plutocracy that is run by an oligarchy that is disguised as a free market.
Right.
And guess who picks up the tab every time these corporations stumble a little bit and need a bailout? The taxpayers. So we're the employees, but the money is running in the opposite direction, as I always say. And the time has come for this to change.
Yes.
And I think that millennials and Gen Z, I saw this back at K2, and I've been telling companies this constantly. Corporations, right around 1974, turned their back on all of us because they went to Congress and they said, we don't want to pay for people's retirement anymore. So they enacted the Employee Retirement Act of 1974, I believe it was. And that's when Congress invented the 401k plan. By the way, 401k is the highest taxable retirement vehicle you can have. They created that on purpose. And guess what? Now, when you retired, you weren't guaranteed a monthly payout. If you only saved $300,000 into your retirement account and you took that out within 10 years, you're done.
Yeah.
So they stepped away from us. And guess what? Millennials were raised in this environment of, and they weren't told this directly, but they were raised in an environment of don't trust corporations because they do not support human beings or humanity. And so when they showed up, I was getting phone calls from people who were just like, what is going on with these kids today? Because they walked in the door. Here's a good example. This pharmaceutical company hired, I think it was 100 millennials to work with them for 90 days. And they were all excited, they're right out of college, and some of them would get jobs and some of them would go on, whatever, but they were excited. After 30 days, they all quit. And they wrote a letter to the CEO and said, you people are evil. Now I'm not going to name the company or the corporation, but ladies and gentlemen, you have a generation that, and I specialize in this. Boomers, what did we do? If the CEO was stealing or they were doing something illegal, we kind of just put our head down and we were like, well, we're lucky to have a job. I hate this place. I'm going to get my resume ready. And then 3 years goes by and you're like, I'm going to get out of here. Wait, I have a mortgage and I have kids in college. all right, it's not that bad. You know?
Right.
And then, but this generation, as soon as they hear that the CEO is being duplicitous,
Yes.
they walk out as a
That's
group. And I've been hired by companies because they're like, well, we gave them everything and they still left.
Right.
Because if you're duplicitous, if you are, speak with forked tongue, as Native Americans say, they will leave as a group because they don't put up with dysfunctional work environments. Well,
let me just speak to something that I observed on the front lines at Apple in New York City, 1991, 1992. This is Steve Jobs didn't come back and save the company till 97. And they had no idea what to do. I would go to these big, 2,000 person Mac user groups on Monday nights at Town Hall. So I was the only large enough place to seat everybody. People all had Macs. They wanted to know, what do we do with the Macs? And I'd come in and I got to hold court and sit on the side of the stage. And I would just take questions for an hour or sometimes 2 hours every Monday night. And what did I learn about Apple as a company? They had nobody helping them in this particular arena. And guess what? I was just doing it because I was so grateful they gave me so much work. I mean, I made a really good living from them as a consultant in New York City. They would hand me job after job after job. But I'd be like, how can I train people? And you can't, because you got to do it yourself. You got to figure out how to make this software work, had this project, blah, blah, blah. But what I witnessed over time when Steve Jobs came back, and my favorite guy is Johnny Ive. I just saw today they announced a brand new 6K freaking monitor that's like, has every little bell and whistle I could ever hope for a monitor. And there he is, Johnny Ive, who basically is Steve Jobs reincarnated in a British accent.
Wow.
Without the arrogance. Very cool. Very cool. But anyway, Apple as a company, maybe because it's a gay guy running it, who's very open-minded and very wise, I don't know. But he gives people a voice. He listens. And this is all we need to do, Brad. We just need to sit and listen and have a discussion, not a little discussion. Yeah. There's a lot to discuss, right? There's a lot to discuss.
We've had a few LGBTQ and trans people on the show, and that is the one trait that's incredibly powerful, and that is it's willingness to listen to all perspectives. And I think you're right. I think sometimes it takes somebody with an open heart to really bring us to another level. You see the companies that are crushing it nowadays, and they're the ones that have heart. Richard Branson, everything he does, you can see it's about heart. And I think that's the powerful shift that's taking place right now. Yes. Let's run one more clip here from Respect for All. And then when we come out, I'm going to ask you 3 lightning round questions.
Sounds good. Okay.
Things certainly have changed since the 50s. I mean, people aren't being lynched in the same way. Cross burnings don't happen in the same way. But police brutality happens. All sorts of other issues. I mean, racism is so subtle, it's so pervasive in this society. And it's incredibly disrespectful the way it affects our educational system, our politics, our religion, where you can live, what jobs you have. I mean, it affects every aspect of living in this country.
John, it's amazing, powerful work you do, and I want to thank you. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to bring this up. John is one hell of a husband. When you took your wife on your honeymoon, you didn't tell her where you were going. You basically said, bring your passport and a bathing suit.
That's right.
And she didn't know till she was on the plane. Am I correct?
She actually didn't know till we had to switch planes in El Salvador to go to Costa Rica, which has been one of my dream locations. I've been all over the world, but I'd never been to Costa Rica. And man, I got to tell you, what a special place that is. You want to talk about climate change?
Yeah.
Climate change in Costa Rica, they've been practicing environmental awareness for 40 years.
Well,
I mean, this is a cool place.
Well, you just upped the game for every dude who's listening, because he gets her on the plane, doesn't tell her where they're going. He's got tickets to Costa Rica, and she doesn't find out where they're going until they are on the second plane. I think that is incredibly romantic. And I saw her reaction because you did a little film about it. But it is just hysterical. And the waterfalls and the places you went in the mountains, it was just
it's an amazing place.
Yeah. And for those of you who've never been to Costa Rica,
and that's so close, virtually,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Well, they filmed Jurassic Park there, just so everybody knows. So it's paradise on Earth.
It is. It is.
So on Awakened Nation, in order for people to get to know you better, we have a lightning round where we ask you just a few questions. So are you ready?
I am
Mr.
ready.
John Pritchard.
I am ready.
Good. What is your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do is to drum. I'm a drummer. I started playing on pots and pans when I was 5. Got my first drum set when I was 7. Got my real drum set, a Slingerland. You know what Slingerland is. You're a drummer.
Oh, yeah.
When I was 10. And that became my drum set till college. And then I got a Gresh. And Gresh is the... I mean, I can't even justify spending $3,000 right now on a drum.
Gresh is, yeah.
It's just mint, such a beautiful sound. But I've really expanded, you know. I learned how to play piano when I was 8. And when I got electronic drums in New York City, because putting your drums in a cab was like insane. And so I got Roland's first MIDI drum kit in 95, and I remember that kit.
I remember that kit.
It's now a hybrid part of my Tama kit. And so anytime I have, I'm on the drums, and you got to check out the soundtrack to the movie is an album that I did with my buddy Adam. He used to play with Miles Davis. My buddy Rich, who lives in the next town, he used to play with Sam Rivers. And they bring out the best in me. And this is probably the 7th album with Rich, the 5th album with Adam. But this is the soundtrack to the movie. And it features this is the coolest instrument from northern India, Bengal. And I had never heard about it. I just bought it off of Amazon a few years ago and finally decided to use it. It's really a drone for... It's a spiritual chant instrument that's called a ektara if there's one string. This is a dotara because it has 2 strings. So I play this, of course, as a drum.
Right.
Because it's got goat skin on a pumpkin gourd. But the string takes you into what I call the higher realm. You can't get there on a drum. Drums stay low, strings go high.
You need
together,
change octaves, yeah.
Well, this became, I sent Adam the tracks from the dotara. He added keyboards, Rich added bass, I added some extra drums, and then we had an album in August, and that became...
That's incredible.
The thing that actually shaped the movie, believe it or not. The music shaped Respect for All. True story.
Wow. That is cool.
Not words.
That is cool.
So it's a God project, you know.
It is a God project, brother.
God projects mean out of the realm of human awareness. You know, you just can't make it up. It just comes and you say, okay, I'll give up what I was going to do with my ego. I'm going to do what I should do here.
You got it. Question number 2. What would people be surprised about you that most people don't know about you?
Oh, immediately. I was a Boy Scout.
You and I think we talked about this. We were both Boy Scouts.
I was a Cub Scout, a Weeblo. I love Boy Scouts. I'm so bummed that they're not part of our society today. You know, my nephews have grown up really without this kind of grounding that I got, what is the Boy Scout credo?
Be prepared. Yeah.
Be prepared, man.
It trained you to be a young man. It really did. I mean, I learned to shoot a gun. I learned to fish. I learned to cook on an open fire. I got all my skill awards. I still have some of my uniforms to this day. And I went through when they had the red beret. You remember the red beret for the Scouts? Yeah. And I was a den chief and a patrol leader.
There you go.
It gave you leadership training.
Yeah. It was leadership training, man. I mean, and also capitalist training. I am very pro capital for you to make whatever you can as a creative person, and I don't want to have any infringement on that, but I also believe in sharing,
Yes.
and that's something that the Boy Scouts embedded in me.
Yeah.
Don't just take, also give,
Exactly.
give and take.
Exactly.
Give and take.
It helps you go through life with a kind heart. You make $1 million, whoop-de-doo. Do you know how many people I gave money to start a business? Just because.
We talked about this one time.
I loved that. I loved that I could help my friends.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, I really felt good about that. And I think that's what it's about. So
it is.
I have a final question. On the day you leave Earth, what do you want to be known for?
I just want to be known for being a kind, generous, loving person. That is my goal. That is what I try to live to be every day. That is why I married the woman I married, because she embodies that. And every day we try our best to help others and to be generous and to be kind. And Lord knows we're faced with all kinds of challenges. And you can't learn, right, unless you're challenged. So there's no easy path here, but
nope.
You just it's that old. Do you ever see the movie Papillon with Dustin Hoffman and Steve McQueen?
Yeah.
Right. What was he remembered for? Not being a thief in France who got blamed for murdering somebody, by a mob boss. He got remembered for surviving Devil's Island and creatively getting off the island and giving back to his family and friends in France.
Wow. Mariposa. Yeah.
That's right. The butterfly.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. And I think you lived it, my friend. Your wife's name real quick?
Anne.
Anne.
Yes, yeah. Anne also went to St. Lawrence, but she was there 4 years before I was, so I did not know her then. I met her after her father passed, and she came back to help take care of her mom, who lives here in town, and her mom knows my parents. And that's how we got together back in 2012. And she's a tennis pro. So I'm also a big tennis jock. And she had a book that she wrote with her husband, who also passed away a few years ago. And the book is in libraries and colleges all around the world.
Wow.
And she wanted to turn it into an ebook. And as you know, ebooks are one of the small things I can do.
Yeah.
Make a little scratch. And in 2012, it's actually just getting released now as an online training program. Probably February or March, we'll hope to have Brain Power Tennis out as an online training course.
Nice.
Because tennis is I don't know if you've played, but that's a very special, lifelong sport. You can play when you're
gotta
very
have
old.
skills. Gotta have skills. Dude, I'm listening to the story of you and Ann, and I'm there's a Yiddish word for this, kismet. It's just like you guys were two ships that passed at different times in the same zone, and then you meet years later. This is hysterical.
It is. It's another God project.
Sweet mystery of life, baby. That's how it goes.
That's right, man.
John, thank you so much for being on
Thank
Awaken
you, Brad.
Nation. Yeah, you're welcome, brother.
And continued success. I mean, I remember last year when you were brainstorming this whole idea of doing a radio program, and who would think you'd end up with Awakened Nation in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
That's a God project right there.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody, tune in next week as we have another awesome guest here on Awakened Nation. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.